I have to say, I probably should have checked the weather forecast before I wrote this drosh, but you'll just have to imagine it. June by John Updike. The sun is rich and gladly pays in golden hours, silver days, and long green weeks that never end. School's out. The time is ours to spend. There's Little League, hopscotch, the creek, and after supper, hide and seek. The livelong light is like a dream, and freckles come like flies to cream. Who remembers summers like this? John Updike captures the beauty of summer as a child, the sense of having nothing but time. Long, hot days with no schedule and no obligations, just the freedom to play and explore. His poem might seem quaint. Do kids still play hopscotch? Does anyone call dinner supper anymore? But we can probably remember days like the ones Updike describes. They were joyful and freeing, and sometimes they were completely and utterly boring. Today, many of our kids hardly know what that kind of boredom feels like, even during these long days of summer. Instead of going to school all day, our children are going to soccer camp and science camp and theater camp. It seems we're all allergic to boredom. These days, we have a handy tool to stave it off at every waking moment. Standing in line at the grocery store, waiting for a friend at a restaurant. These used to be times we might get bored. But now they're just opportunities to read the news or play Wordle. Being busy is a virtue, and therefore, boredom is a sign of weakness. Jewish tradition also warns against it, for idleness leads to boredom and to sin. Of course, the sages would recommend studying Torah instead of checking Facebook. But there was an article in the New York Times this week about the benefits of letting our children get bored. I think these benefits might actually apply to all of us. But here's what psychologist Erin Westgate says. She says, first, boredom is informative. It's like an indicator light on a car's dashboard. Boredom is telling you that what you're doing right now isn't working. Usually that means the task you're doing is too easy or too difficult, or that it lacks meaning. So letting our children experience boredom, just like other negative emotions, allows them to develop the tools to recognize and cope with those feelings. And second, she says, boredom can lead to fulfillment because boredom offers children an opportunity to experiment with the kinds of pursuits that feel fulfilling and interesting to them. When you give children unstructured time, you give them an opportunity to figure out what they want to do with it. They're forced to use their imagination and creativity to find an activity that is meaningful to them. Jewish tradition might warn against the dangers of idleness, that those times of idleness lead to sin. But ironically, Judaism also advocates for holy idleness every week. The traditional acts that are prohibited on Shabbat are all acts of creation and creativity, from planting to writing to cooking. Shabbat is a day on which we are obligated not to be productive. In the immortal words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, 6 days a week we wrestle with the world, wringing profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. The world has our hands, but our soul belongs to someone else. 6 days a week, we seek to dominate the world. On the seventh day, we try to dominate the self. So by removing the activities and busyness of the work week, we are left with empty, holy time. As Dr. Westgate suggests, unstructured time is what allows children to figure out what is fulfilling and meaningful. Shabbat is what allows all of us to figure out how to nourish our souls. For some of us, free time and the accompanying boredom can be scary. Without an activity or schedule, or God forbid, without a phone in our hands, we can feel utterly unmoored. But in those quiet, terrifying moments, there's an opening for revelation. Who am I? What do I yearn for? What is my purpose? Shabbat is the perfect time for us to allow these questions to surface and to consider what the answers might be. We might not all have the privilege of endless summer days, of time that is ours to spend. But we can try to make space for just a bit of that free time every Shabbat. And then, if your children or grandchildren or spouse say, "I'm bored," you can answer, "You're welcome." Or maybe you'll just say, "Shabbat Shalom."